just a baker's dozen of influences coming from all over the place. One of the nice things was that we had some independent record stores, so you could get pretty much any kind of music from anywhere, even though, you know, we're out here. And we had CKDU, the campus station, which made a big change in that you could hear all kinds of music. Hearing music from all over the world became a lot easier when you had a radio station acting as kind of a filter for it all. That all kind of got thrown into this pressure cooker, and you get this sound that's, you know, sort of influenced by the independent stuff out of Seattle, but not too similar, that it doesn't have its own flavor. It's, you know, kind of angular, kind of art schooly. Of course, Nazcad was a big influence on a lot of these bands, coming from that environment that encourages creativity. So you get music that's kind of loose, kind of jangly. You know, Sloan was obviously heavily influenced by Britpop. Bands like Stone Roses, you know, Blur, and My Bloody Valentine, there's a lot of that influence coming into it. In a way, we've always been more influenced by England in Halifax than by a lot of other centers.
When I was a kid, if you wanted to buy a Pixies record, you went to Taz or you went to Track and you looked at the photocopied catalog and you ordered it and you paid the guy, and it came in 6 weeks to 6 months in the mail to the record store from the UK. There was no going to iTunes and downloading the latest thing or any of that stuff, you know. So we were cut off, right? Very cut off. You have like a lot of creativity happening that often got translated into people forming bands that did really interesting stuff.
It was kind of a new sound, like, you know, it was derived from other stuff, but I mean, like, you know, Eric Stripper, Sloan, like that kind of the volume of the guitars and like melody mixed with like these fuzzy guitars. That was like a sound that people haven't heard before.
I was spending most of my life on the road running around working with, you know, Canadian artists that were already reasonably established. So the Bryan Adams of the world and the Kim Mitchells and the Tom Cochrans and all of those guys, which at the time I suppose was more mainstream rock radio. When I moved to this part of the country, I realized that there was a whole other thing going on, referred to eventually as the indie rock movement or whatever, because a lot of them weren't signed. The sound was completely alien to me because it didn't sound like anything else that was coming out of the country at the moment. It's scrappier than I was used to, so I had to retrain myself how to listen to stuff.
I think that Halifax, because it is a fairly small city with a lot of musicians, there's always been a lot of exchange between musicians who are interested in different genres of music. So when I started playing in Halifax in the early 1980s, we were playing, you know, punk rock, but, you know, it wasn't unusual to have a guy who was also a metal guy in your band. Like, we like loud music here, probably because we like to drink, but it was always rooted in pop music.
The important thing for us was the songs, and we were trying our best to make it sound as good as possible. Like, we weren't trying to make like bad sounding recordings. And maybe that's the difference. Like, we were using limited equipment, but getting the best out of it that we could. So maybe that's what made it like our sound.
You know, there's almost always a really good hook. The lyrics, Joel or maybe even Murphy will tell you, you know, it's a pretty tough crowd. They also incorporated where they lived and what they were doing in the music. So you'll hear lots of geographical references or references to people that only people in Halifax would know. And in the context of a story and a song, it doesn't make any difference. That's, you know, completely fine. You can sing about whatever you want. But it's just an added little buzz if you're out here and you're in the know and you know what's going on. So you can hear a song that's completely innocuous to somebody else, and you'll be going, ooh, man, oh man, ooh. He took a piss there, holy smokes.
That local, regional kind of referencing, I would credit guys who came before me, like Chris Murphy for sure from Sloan. Like, I think something that really stuck with me when I was 15 or 16 was hearing the song of his, Underwhelmed, a really big Sloan song, where I remember hearing the demo of it, you know, like in its infancy. I mean, I saw their second show. I remember them playing that song. And there's a lyric in it that says, you know, I told her that I don't smoke or drink. She told me to loosen up on her way to the LC.
I told her that I don't smoke or drink. She told me to loosen up on her way to the LC.
Once you realize that the LC not every other province has liquor commissions. That's like really, really specific to Nova Scotia, you know? And that kind of stuck with me, the idea that, you know, you could sing about where you're from and reference these places. And it's like inside jokes with your friends, right? I started kind of rolling that into my writing a little bit.
So